All right, good evening, everyone. All right, it's just turned 7, so we'll get started. I see Father Dave is with us this evening. Welcome, Father. Yeah, great to have you here. And I don't know if we properly welcomed you yet to the committee. So Father Dave has kindly put himself forward to join Cpic, replacing Father Francis. And we, of course, extend our thanks and gratitude to Father Francis for his time served on this committee. We certainly enjoyed having him involved in past discussions and deliberations and whatnot. And we now look forward to having Father Dave at the table. So once again, welcome. A little bit late with that welcome, but nonetheless. All right. Okay, and if you'd be so kind, Father, to start us with our opening prayer.
Sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord our God, look with love on your people of this council and keep them safe in your service. Guide us and help us to work together for the good of all. Bless our plans and deliberations and bring them to success. Father, we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
All right, thank you, Father. And for the land acknowledgement, Nancy, do you have that available for us?
Good evening, everyone, and we'll let Andrea turn on the video for the land acknowledgement. Andrea, can you do that for us?
Each of us has a relationship to the natural environment, the land, water, earth, the habitat, and ecosystems. Land acknowledgements provide us with an opportunity to offer recognition, respect to the original inhabitants of the regions that we live in and work on. There are many things that we can do to go beyond simply reading a land acknowledgement script. To make it more meaningful, we need to consider that we are, in fact, acknowledging not only the ancestral lands, but also the historical and complex intersections of settler impacts on Indigenous histories, economies, ecologies, livelihood, well-being, and governance structures. A territorial acknowledgement is not an endpoint in the journey of reconciliation. Actions create conditions for true reconciliation and create a foundation for restoring, renewing, or developing a new relationship with Indigenous peoples. For hundreds of years, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Attawaddaron, the Potawatomi, the Wendat, and Lenape nations have sought to walk gently on this land. They assisted the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was, at times, a harsh climate. Under consultations from elders, knowledge holders from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and 6 nations of the Grand River Territory, the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, along with Halton Catholic District School Board, created this land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawaddaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
4 directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Great, thank you, Andrea, for playing that for us. All right. Okay, our first order of business, the agenda. Unless there are any corrections, if I could have someone move to approve the agenda. Thank you, Jen moved, and Laura seconded. Thank you. Okay, and our minutes from the prior meeting. Likewise, unless there's any corrections, if I could have someone move to accept.
I will, Jay. It's Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Lydia. Lydia, second. All right, very good. And I'll pass it right back to Nancy to provide us with board update.
Thank you, Jerry, and good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. For the board update tonight, I'm going to share some items from the academic side and some different things as we're moving through the school year. So currently, our elementary program from kindergarten to grade 8, we had the change in learning environment effective February 16th, and we continue to have about 4,300 students continuing in the virtual school. We had the movement of about 730 students between the virtual and the face-to-face learning environment on February 16th. Enrollment in our virtual school actually went down by 400 students, which resulted in 9 classrooms were distributed throughout the virtual school. So we did have to collapse some so that we could send some of our teachers back to the face-to-face learning environment. Our high school students are now in their 3rd quadrimester, There was an increase in the number of students following the remote learning for going into our cohort C for their third quadmester. Right now, we have registration taking place for our grade 10 to 12 students for September. And our grade 9 math program, I know some people had asked questions about this. It will be de-streamed for September 2021. And so there will be a new course code for that de-stream math. And you will, if you have a student going into grade 9, further communication will be going out. As we are looking at September 2021, elementary parents will be receiving a survey this week on March 3rd, which will be open from March 3rd to March 10th for September 2021. The preferred learning environment for their children for September will be a virtual school will continue to be an option. Parents will have an opportunity in June to update their preference depending on the circumstances of COVID-19, and hopefully things will improve throughout Ontario. For next year, there will only be one change in the learning environment for 2021-22, and that will take place in January of 22, with that switchover date being in February of 2022. So similar to where we were at just this year after those term 1 report cards go home. For this school year, the final change in the learning environment survey for this year will go out to parents on March 11th to the 19th, with the final change of the learning environment for elementary to take place on Monday, March 29th. Programming continues in both our elementary virtual school and our face-to-face setting, where the teachers are following the regular curriculum expectations, but gathering data through the student needs through diagnostic assessments for literacy and numeracy. Instruction in the classroom in the virtual school continues to be through differentiated instruction and small group instruction. Our secondary students may change their learning environment for the 4th quadmester, and their 4th quadmester begins on April 26th. So if the students have been in cohort C, they will be able to go into either cohort A or B for their 4th quadmester. Kindergarten registrations continue to take place in our elementary setting, and parents have begun to come into the school setting to verify their documents. Our early years team are leading our Ready, Set, Go information sessions throughout the beginning of March, and the school's welcome to our new parent sessions will be virtually in the spring. Discussions have begun with the elementary and secondary schools on the plans for graduations in June. Schools have begun to plan with a graduation committee based on the current protocols and circumstances around COVID-19. And will be communicating with the parent community. At this time, all graduation ceremonies will proceed virtually as we are unable to gather in large groups. All schools will make it unique to their school community. Distribution of diplomas will be done as per the graduation committee plan at the school or through a drive-by. School photographers will begin to be coming into the schools for graduation photos only, according to our PH COVID-19 protocols. So the Halton Region Public Health Unit has approved the photographers to be in the schools specifically for grad photos. This week, we are beginning our community testing in each region. So Burlington will happen at Corpus Christi with the Corpus Christi Family of Schools, students and staff accessing the testing centers. In Oakville, it will be for Holy Trinity Family Schools from HT, and in Halton Hills, St. Francis Xavier will be the location for this week. And then it will rotate each week, and parents will receive communication about the testing centers. As you're aware, there are new protocols for screening, and when a positive case in a classroom is closed, usually the closure period is for 14 days. Our teachers will continue to deliver the program remotely as we did during the remote time through January and February. We are in the season of Lent, and all our schools participated in a virtual Ash Wednesday liturgy, and each community is focused on some community outreach through the season of Lent. Many are supporting our Halton Catholic Children Foundation with a 24-hour fast on March 30th and 31st. Just some other updates that I want to share with Cpic is the pro-grant. So we've talked about the pro-grant a couple times this year. The funds for the pro-grant will be distributed to our board parent committees, Cpic being one, SEAC, and IAC, to plan virtual events for parents. The sessions could be similar to what OAPSE is doing, with many events planned that parents can engage with by choice. So I'm hoping that we could discuss tonight our Cpic committee of parents who may want to plan for how the program can be used. How we've divided the funds is each of the groups, so Cpic, SEAC, and IAC, will have $6,500 to plan their events for this year. It's a little bit of a tight time frame with us starting in March, but we decided as a group that it might be better served if the larger organization of parent committees actually plan the events to draw more parents in for specific events rather than divvying up small amounts of money where everything has to be done virtual this year. So we can discuss that further tonight. The other item that I want to share with you is Andrea and I did a little bit of a discovery over the last month that Cpic had a locker. It was like a U-Haul locker where previous Cpic committees had stored a variety of items that I'm thinking that it was maybe for larger meetings. So Andrea was able to go to the storage unit and found that there were the zip signs and some technology pieces, some books. We have since stopped that contract with the storage unit, and we've moved the items to St. John's School in Oakville, which is a closed school but has storage space. So then rather than paying the monthly fee that have been in place for the storage, we no longer have to incur those costs. So the items are now at St. John's in room number 5, and it's locked, this space, but we're hoping to have a couple Cpic members go out to that site at some point so that we can actually look at what the items are and decide what needs to be saved and what items may need to be replaced. So one of the things that does need to be replaced, and we won't need them right away, but are the zip signs that Cpic had made a couple of years ago. So we want to make sure that we get those signs redone and branded with our new logo. And that's it for me. If anybody has any questions.
Yes, Maria, go ahead.
Hi there. I had a couple of quick ones. First of all, with respect to the photos, so you said it was just the grad photographers that were allowed in the schools. I know in our school they hadn't finished taking like the usual pictures of the cohort C students in our high school. So I guess that's still not, that's still on hold, I assume. I don't know if other schools are in the same situation or not, but.
Maria, right now, the only approval that public health has allowed at this time is the graduation photos.
Okay.
Since the graduation photos is an important milestone,
right.
And last year, most of the photos were done when we had the shutdown. Let's see how that fares, and if we could bring them in, we'll revisit that. But right now, we're going to just do the graduation photos.
Okay, and then in terms of the streaming of the math. So my understanding is there's no more applied math, it's just academic. And I don't know if you know the answers to these questions, but does that mean, so is the academic curriculum staying as it is and all the students will be accessing that, or is there a change to the actual curriculum? And my second question would be, you know, is the ministry providing, or is the board providing increased supports in those classes for students who, you know, maybe would have normally been in an applied class and might need some extra help, whether they're identified students or not? I'm just really curious about how that's all going to play out.
I'll do my best to answer that, Maria, and then if I don't have all the answers, I can come back. So it's a D-Stream course. It has new curriculum expectations, and we haven't fully received everything for the curriculum content. Okay, it's much more in line with where like our grade 8 program was, with the number of levels of different student needs in that class. Having said that, it's really a shift in the mindset and the delivery of that grade 9 math curriculum, but it's about teaching the math, the expectations. Yes, the class will have varying needs, and the teachers will have to adjust to meeting the student needs. So it's not something we haven't done before. We actually have had different schools had different attempts at delivering a course like this, but now the ministry has put that out that the grade 9 program will be streamed for September. So we are waiting on the actual curriculum, and resources to support that, and then we'll be in servicing our staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, Nancy, I sent you an email earlier about this. I'll ask it now. Just regarding the decision making around graduations being virtual, and I guess just so we can carry the message back in terms of how that decision was arrived at, and who's under, like, I guess under what authority, and where does that rest, that final decision, and is there any I mean, we're still some time away from graduation. Is there any possibility, if conditions improve, of allowing some kind of an in-person ceremony, whether it be an outdoor ceremony where larger groups are allowed to gather with appropriate precautions and that kind of thing? So that's what some parents are wondering, is what, if any, are the possibilities of doing something other than virtual?
Jerry, so I've sat on both committees, the elementary and secondary, as we've discussed all of this. So we're a little bit further ahead than we were last year. And so where we are at right now, we need to start planning for graduation so that we can do well-planned graduations, and we're not going to be waiting to the last minute. At the current time, we don't have anything out by public health or within the province that we can have large gatherings. So we need to start planning at this point. As things improve, and we all hope everything will improve, things may be able to shift. But for our high school settings, with the large size of our graduating class, we will not be able to have large, even outdoor gatherings, because even last year when things improved, we weren't higher than 100 people outside. And most of our graduating class are about 400 students. Okay, so we definitely not for our high school. Mm-hmm. For elementary, we did discuss schools that are smaller may be able to do something outdoors, but once again, outdoors, even with 100 people, so even a school that has 25 graduates, if every family brought a couple people with them, we may tip over that amount. And then who polices that? So those are some of the things that we've discussed. So at this stage right now, we've said, let's plan for that virtual ceremony. Some will be live, some will be recorded, whatever the committee decides, but make sure that there are other things planned in terms of how we're going to distribute the diplomas and the awards and things like that. So schools had different, very creative ways last year. That's why they're excited this year, because they have more time to plan for it. So together with the parent communities in each community, they're going to plan for that together with their graduation committee and who represents that. Okay. I don't think we can plan right now for large gatherings. So I wouldn't want people to do all of that planning and then have to pull it back. I think it's important that these are the circumstances we are right now, and we would start planning graduations right now at this time in normal circumstances. So let's start to plan and see where we fare by the time June comes around. Okay, so the only thing that's overseeing this right now is public health saying we can't have large gatherings. Right. Indoor or outdoors, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Okay, very well. Thanks for that extra info. Maria, did you raise your hand again?
Sorry, I just forgot to take it down.
Oh, okay. No worries. All right, great. Thank you, Nancy, for the various updates. All right, Vice Chair Duarte.
Good evening, everybody.
Just the update.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. It's been over a month since we had our last meeting, and in the meantime, we have had 3 board meetings. I'll just give a quick update on some notable things that were done. So at the board meeting of Jan 19th, a couple of policies, notable policies were reviewed and they were approved. One was the school uniform dress code policy. This was just updated to take care of decisions being made during COVID-19 by schools which needed uniforms and dress codes. Another policy on that same meeting was the integrated accessibility standard policy. So HCDSB is committed to provide barrier-free access to everyone, and so that policy came up. At the same meeting, the early French immersion boundary review process for French was talked about, and the staff presented numbers of student enrollment across the region, and Milton is leading with a big number. So with Oakville and other areas too. So based on those registration numbers, staff felt that the boundary review was sufficient to be held only in Milton. And so that process is on the way. It's happening right now. At that same meeting, we had a very interesting presentation by student trustees about the return to school and the well-being survey and how difficult or easy it is for them to do their schoolwork right now. So that was very interesting to note. There were a few questions which were posed to the students population, and lots of the answers came from slightly difficult to very difficult. For example, how difficult it is to get your schoolwork done. Lots of answers came from slightly difficult to very difficult. And a couple of other questions was how difficult to stay focused. And again, it was difficult for students to stay focused, and also during how they feel, how stressed out they feel. And again, the answers are very similar. Students are being stressed out during this time. They feel stressful, they are overwhelmed, and some of them are confused and tiring. So this is what came out from there. Very interesting. And so we do have the resources in house, and we have senior staff in our mental health and well-being. We have tools and resources in place, and the staff is using those tools. So at that same meeting, at the February 2nd meeting, a notable action item was the approval to proceed with school capital planning for a new school, Milton number 9. Again, we are planning far ahead, and we're just talking about, even though we don't have the approval to proceed, we are planning in advance. And so the big growth area is Milton. We all know that right now. So as far as STEM is concerned, and I've been talking about it all the time, the steering committee has presented things that they are doing. They are trying to build STEM into a curriculum and extracurricular activities right from elementary to secondary. And so that's in the works, that's happening. Very good progress over there. Some notable policies at that meeting were reporting student achievement to parents and guardians. Again, it was just a review. And a big policy was the equity and inclusive education policy. There were a few changes to this policy, and the policy was basically upgraded to bring it to current ministry guidelines. I have a few things to report on that. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Upcoming notable items. So we, as some of you may know, we have embarked on the multi-year strategic planning process. We have initiated this process, and parents will hear more about it. Parents will have an opportunity to participate and provide input into the planning process. There will be lots of surveys coming out in the months to come. So please stay tuned, and please pass message on to your school councils and the parents to participate and give your feedback. Feedback is very important for us to build it into the strategic plan, and hope that we get support from everybody. And again, trustees are always being updated at every board meeting about the return to school by Director Daly. And we know that the pandemic continues to change the way we work and the way the staff works and staff educates our children. The ministry guidelines have also been changing continuously, and so we are aware, and trustees are being kept aware of the changes in the system. Another thing to note is trustees have been attending ministry professional development sessions on diversity, equity and inclusion conducted by York University, and I have been attending it personally myself and some other trustees too. We are also running our own professional development sessions on equity inclusion topics, and we have a session coming up March, the second week of March. And we have guest speakers coming in to do these presentations for trustees. So we are keeping ourselves trained, we are updating ourselves, and we are learning at the same time. That's all for my report. I'm now available to take a few questions if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dwight. Any questions? letting Marvin off easy. Come on,
I
guys.
know. I was hoping. I was going to say easy questions only. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, thanks again, Marvin. All right.
You're welcome.
Okay, so moving on to our other standing items. First off, from OAPC, Denise.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I'm just going to follow up very quickly with the some of the announcements that I made at the Council of Chairs meeting. We are starting tomorrow with the first of 3 webinars in our Parent Engagement and Education series. So we'll start tomorrow with Paul Davis with his presentation on smartphones and online privacy, and that will begin at 7:15 p.m. And again, following that on March 10th at 7 p.m., we'll have Anthony Parada, who will talk about a movie guide. And then finishing up on March 24th with Maestro Fresh West Williams with his presentation on Stick to Your Vision. I've got some privately through OAPC some real positive feedback from our Halton reception on the presentation at the Council of Chairs, and had some communications with some reps and also some principals also asking for more information to spread to their parent communities. So I'm really pleased about that. Further on, looking forward, the next sort of solidified event for OAPC for Halton Catholic will be on April the 7th. So I've just got confirmation that on April the 7th at 7 p.m. We'll be holding a meeting with OAPC reps, sort of a retreat, a virtual retreat just for our reps. And that will feature 2 speakers. One will be the executive director of OAPC, Annalisa Crudo-Perry, and the second speaker for the evening will be Ann Jameson, the executive director of the Institute for Catholic Education. She's just been confirmed to speak. So I'm excited about that particular event. It's been a while since I've been able to have I think just an OAPC rep event for Halton Catholic. I did one many years ago. So this is exciting news for us at OAPC and also for Halton. And then OAPC, I'll continue to update. They're in the planning stages of a 2-day conference in May, as well as a virtual town hall. So continuing to add events as we go along towards the end of the school year. Other than that, my next newsletter will probably go out to our reps sometime in April after some of these events have happened. And I'm looking forward to sending out some information, as I said, to our reps upcoming about the April 7th date. So that's it for me, and any questions I'll be happy to take.
All right, any questions for Denise? Oh, okay. All right, thank you very much, Denise. And just a comment on the Council of Chairs. I know I have some feedback that the OAPC reps really enjoyed having their own breakout sessions, and they provided some terrific feedback as well from those 2 breakouts. So really well done. That was good. Okay. All right. Moving on to our subcommittees then, and a brief report from each one. So starting off with our school council support committee, Tiana, if you would take that away, please.
Hi, it's actually Laura. So I'll be taking the lead for this meeting for Cpic this month. So just to highlight a few of the core initiatives that we're going to be focusing on, just a bit of a recap. So one of them is around creating better synergies between Cpic and the school councils. So the intent here was to allocate a point person of sorts on the school council subcommittee or the general Cpic committee to assign to a family of schools. And really what we're trying to accomplish here is, again, just creating a better synergy and flow of information and sharing of information back and forth between Cpic and what we do to the school councils, because I think we've all agreed that oftentimes it's school councils aren't aware of all the things that we're doing sort of behind the scenes. So that is really just the bridging of communication. and having some conversations sort of behind the scenes between some of the folks on the Cpic committee. We feel that going forward, there's probably enough members, or we will have enough members to have one representative within the Cpic committee to allocate to a particular family of schools, and potentially having a few extras allocated to one region. So that'll, I think, will continue to evolve as we sort of solidify how many members we will ultimately have. But again, the intent there is to just really build that synergy. So once we can, uncover who those folks are and allocate them to the particular schools between, the group at large and vice versa, we can start to build that flow of communication. So I think that's going to be a really impactful initiative to make sure that from the high level board down to the individual school level, that communication is streamlined. So I think that's going to be a really impactful initiative. Secondly, we talked in our last meeting about creating a school council resource page. And this was really around, again, it's all in the spirit of sharing information. Each individual school has various initiatives that they do throughout the year, whether it be fundraising, best practices, sharing of challenges, successes, all of those things. So we really want to build this resource page that each individual school council can access, which gives them a variety of resources, whether it's a vendor that they, one school was successful with that another school can benefit from, those sorts of things. So again, aligning that communication between the individual school councils and Cpic at large. So I think what we decided would be good to help us do this would be to create some sort of survey that would go out to the various school councils to find out, what information would be useful for you, what sort of things would you like to see on this resource page, and then we could build that resource page to be meaningful for everybody once we collect the information. So we would need the assistance of the Cpic committee to, approve the survey, and then we could sort of mobilize that out to the school councils. So it might be something that we need to take offline and build behind the scenes, but that's what we're tabling in terms of our intent. And then the resource page itself would be something that we could maintain probably on a quarterly basis, or we could pick a reasonable interval to update this page. We don't want to make it something that we have to update on a monthly basis. I think it would be a bit much, but as we add new vendors, as we add new processes or best practices that we could share, we update it within a particular time frame. So those are things that we can sort of build as we go. And then thirdly was just in some recent discussions with this Cpic committee behind the scenes again, was our subcommittee creating or being responsible for updating the school council handbook and overseeing the compilation of a best practices for the school councils. So as I understand it, it's the school council handbook has been created and it's been around for many, many years, but I just don't think there's been a lot of work that's gone into keeping it updated. Perhaps we've had people come and go through the years, so there hasn't been a large focus on keeping it maintained. So again, we'll be tasked with updating that handbook and submitting that out to the various school councils, and then also compiling a best practices for the school councils. And this is just giving them a bit more of focus in terms of what they do and what they're trying to accomplish at the individual school level. So we'll work through that. That's going to be a bit of a work in progress, but I think we have a starting point. We do have a handbook that we can access and start to build from. And then lastly, this is really in support of the communications committee. Again, with our social media, trying to elevate our social media presence. The school council committee is really there just to support the communications committee. So if there's a particular initiative or something really important or noteworthy to share with all of the the parents and community, that the school council can escalate any of those concerns or ideas and sharing of ideas from the school council level up to the communications committee, and they could potentially add that to any of our social media feeds. So again, it's really everything ultimately ties back into our first point around creating this point person that is allocated to this family of schools that is really just that conduit to sharing and moving information back and forth. I think that's just key to make sure that everyone's involved and stays engaged. So that is our hopefully brief update. Any questions or comments?
Sorry, I did have my hand up. I don't know if you saw that. It's Maria.
Yeah, go ahead, Maria. Sorry.
That sounds all really fantastic. Great ideas there, and I love to see that all happening. I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you're aware, there's a group. They're all volunteer, very passionate about school councils and parent engagement. They're actually called, I think, Parents Engaged in Education.
Okay.
And they have a website that has tremendous resources, not only for school councils, how to be effective, but also in terms of parent engagement. And so I would just suggest maybe checking it out. You may want to have a link to that page on your page. And also they have, like, again, their resources are great, and you may not have to reinvent the wheel, right? You may have things there that you can just borrow, and they're happy to have it all shared. Like, they're very, that's what they're all about. And they used to put on great conferences that were free. I think now they have webinar series. So there's a lot of good information there. So I just wanted to share that.
That's great. Thank you. So it's called Parents Engaged in Education?
I believe so. Yeah, I can send it to you.
Yeah.
But, that's the name of it. It's very straightforward, and they're very straightforward, and they're just genuine. Like, this lady, it's just her passion, and she just she really has a very genuine goals there in terms of improving parent education everywhere. So
that's great.
Happy to share that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind sharing the link, that would just save me from searching the wrong group.
Yeah.
So that
absolutely.
would be great. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Terrific. Thanks, Maria. Any other questions for Laura or the team on the school council support committee? So Laura, if I could just ask then, in terms of, if you're able to answer this, in terms of next steps and timelines, as to when something will, you'll come back with, proposals, plans, whatever it is,
sure.
To put before the committee.
So I think in terms of this allocation of the assigned representative, I think when I was sort of chatting behind the scenes with Jen, we were just trying, I think there was some additional committee members that were going to be added to the Cpic committee. So I think once we figure that out, I would assume shortly, that's probably the starting point. Once we know who those people are and we can start to assign it. So I would say over the next, I don't know exactly, but I would say over the next 30 days, we can probably solidify who those people are, and then start to work in conjunction to that with on this new best practices guide and updating the council handbook. So I think over the next 30 days, we can start to work on those two pieces in tandem, and then start to just sort of escalate that out to the school councils.
Okay, great. Yeah, so because what I'd ask then is anything you're planning to implement, if it could be, I suppose, drafted up and then circulated amongst the entire committee.
Yep.
Ideally a week prior to our next meeting, so that people have an opportunity to review, consider, and then once we do meet, if necessary, we can vote on it. But more likely than not, I think all of the things you're proposing are spot on. So I imagine we'll pretty readily gain consensus. But nonetheless, just to follow the proper procedure.
Great.
Yeah, if you can get it, if you can be guided by those timelines, that's great.
Yeah.
Just so we can get stuff kind of firmly in place, and
no, that's great. I think the only thing we'll need probably from the broader Cpic committee is who who we assign to those particular family of schools. I think it'll be pretty simple in the sense that we already know who's at large, who's Oakville, Burlington, so we have some folks already. But that'll probably just be an exercise maybe to make sure we know who's going to be allocated to which family. So, yeah.
Sure.
Good.
Yeah, that we could likely do in the background, and you could,
Yeah.
don't come ready to propose. Here's all the family schools. Here's all the representatives, and put them in their spots, I guess, and then
Right. Yep.
then we hopefully nail it down. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, that's great, Laura. Lots of trivia. There's lots. You know what? I meant to say this at the outset of our subcommittee updates and their standing item updates. Is there's tons of work going on in the background. So
Yeah.
hats off to everyone, because I know everyone's working hard to put some great stuff forward. So good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Jerry. Can you hear me? Because I had
Yep.
some problem with this headset. Okay, perfect. Laura, I just wanted to clarify, perhaps my email wasn't clear. We can actually go ahead and do all the allocation now, Laura. So what we're talking about is there's not going to be changes to people being added to Cpic, but what we're going to propose, and Jerry's going to talk about more detail later in the agenda, is possibly having more regional specific representatives as opposed to at large.
Okay.
So it will still have the 10 people. It's just what positions they hold per se.
Okay. Fair enough.
I also have the information too as to what areas everyone's from, if that's helpful. I don't know what family schools everyone's from. You might have to follow up with them, but.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Anything you could share to sort of start me off in the right direction.
No problem.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Jen. Maria, is your hand up from before?
Sorry, I always forget to take it down.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you for asking, though.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, all right, moving on to our next one, Parent and Community Engagement Committee, Joel.
Hi there. Don't have a lot to report on. We do have, so starting off, I just would say we have our Facebook page up and running. We're starting to post things to that. So we've been sharing the recent council chairs in the last Cpic meeting to the page, which got some good response, as well as a few other pieces of information to share to that, which is great. I'm trying to get access to the Cpic Twitter handle, but nobody seems to know where the password went. So if by some chance anybody does know what happened to the password or has the password, please send it my way so I can have access to it. If not, I think we'll have to go and try and draft up a new Twitter account altogether to utilize on that front. And I don't know if I'd have to run that by the board staff to that happen, or if we can just do it ourselves. I don't know what the protocols are on that. In terms of the material itself, at the last meeting we talked to everybody, all the other subcommittees, to say if you had stuff that you need communicated out to the parent groups, to send it my way, and I can post it to the Facebook page and our social medias to communicate that out immediately. If any of the other member subcommittees do have information they want for me to send out, just send it my way. I can give you my email if need be, and you can just send it my way, and I can get it posted usually within the next day or so. But yeah, I just need stuff to share and to communicate out to our parents. Any questions?
Nancy, I think you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, Joel, did you reach out to Juliana or Amanda in communications for that password for the Twitter handle?
No, I'm recalling from memory, the last time we met with Andrea way back, I'm going to say it's almost this time last year. I asked her about it, and she said that she was going to look for it. And I never heard back from her, and there was talk about possibly having to redo a new Cpic Twitter handle.
Okay, I will check with them tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Okay, because Amanda and Juliana really help with that, so they may know. Okay.
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 Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Nancy. All right, and thank you, Joel, for the update. Any other questions for Joel or the team? No. Okay. Very good. All right. Moving on to the bylaws subcommittee. Steve.
Good evening, everyone. As you may have seen Jerry's email recently with the draft document, hope that you had a chance to have a look at it. We've been focusing on the structure of the document in terms of eliminate duplication, inconsistencies, grammar, spelling, etc. We also reordered the articles within the bylaw in a more logical way so that it flows better. Also, we've kind of stayed away from making any major changes to the bylaws themselves, but since those changes would require Cpic's agreement and a vote on as well. In terms of possible changes, I think it's been mentioned tonight. We're looking at the Cpic membership and proposing a couple of options, and I know Jerry will go into detail later on the agenda. And also, as a result, it would somewhat affect the election process as well. That would be needed to be updated as well. I think that's about it. We value feedback, so if you have any comments or questions, do not hesitate to contact any member of the subcommittee.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Well summarized there. I guess the one thing I'd add, and one thing we did do as insofar as we didn't make any material changes to the bylaws themselves, rather it was more of an exercise of, as Steve described, it was a cleanup exercise because the document itself was I mean it's somewhat dated back to 2017. And it in some areas it lacks some specifics. So one thing that we did do, you'll notice if you're comparing the old document to the new document, is that we expanded on the election process, gave it a bit more rigor, a bit more detail around it, how it should work, without changing the spirit of the bylaw, of the election bylaw itself. So where there was a lack of specificity, we put a little more in based on experience and based on practice, what actually happens in practice. So beyond that, though, it really was just cleaning up language, getting rid of redundancies or duplications. And some, frankly, inconsistencies from one section to another. There was inconsistencies. So and we'll as Steve mentioned, we've got some other specific things to go through. The hope at this point is to gain acceptance of the new version of the document. Now, it was only distributed to everyone on Friday. So you've only had a couple of days, granted the weekend, to look at it. But I'd love to open it up now briefly, if we can, for any immediate feedback. Is there anything that people saw in there? Good, bad, indifferent. Has anyone had time to spend time on the document to be able to comment on it? So yeah, I guess that'd be my question. Okay, I'll take it from the lack of hands that people haven't had time to go through it. So fair enough.
No, it's because we made it really, really, really clear, Jerry.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's just perfect. Is that the feedback? Okay, good. I could live with that. Okay. Yeah, so what I guess the ask then will be is by our next meeting, we will hope to put it before you again with a motion to adopt the new document as the new version of the bylaws. And again, that's separate from actually any material changes to any one of the bylaws. So yeah, that would be our next step. Yeah, I can't believe it either, Maria. What the heck? Okay. All right. Okay, great. Thanks again, Steve. All right, and as I said, our committee has been very busy this year, and not only working on our own initiatives and our own mandate, but also representing Cpic on various board committees. So I'll ask each in turn for their brief update. And Lydia, you're on the Mental Health Board Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, the Mental Health and Wellbeing Steering Committee didn't invite me to any meeting after the one I reported back in November. I followed up with them, and then I forwarded the info to Jen, and she said that she will also try to follow up and see if any other meeting is scheduled. So I will attend it. But the trustee Duarte mentioned that some mental health tools were deployed or discussed during the board meeting, and I hope that some of the action items which were discussed at the last one are implemented now, but I cannot tell that. I don't know the details. So if any other, I hope by the next meeting I will have something more to report, but for now, don't at this moment didn't don't have anything further to report.
Okay, Lydia. So just quick question: is it that they haven't had any more meetings, or they just haven't been inviting you?
I don't know. I follow up. I sent an email to the contact person around Christmas time asking if there is any other meeting that I'm the rep from the Cpic, and if they have any meeting scheduled to send me the invite, but I haven't heard back from her anything. And then I forwarded the contact to Jen just a couple of weeks ago, and she said that she will try to follow up with them as well.
And I see Jen's got her hand up, so maybe she's got an answer for us, Jen.
Hi, I don't have an answer, but I actually forwarded it to Nancy because I didn't know the person who was the head of that committee, and Nancy was going to check in with her and see if there were any future meetings planned. I see Nancy has her hand up.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Nancy, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Lydia, they haven't had another committee meeting. They've been doing more of the board staff meetings, but I will forward your information to them so to make sure you continue to be involved, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Nancy. All right, moving on to our next one, bullying prevention. Sarah.
Hello, everyone. So we had the final meeting for the working group for the bullying prevention document. So everything was being compiled together. We were just waiting on a few infographics to be added into the document. And once they were added in, it was going to be sent out. And at that point, it will be sent to Cpic for everyone to take a look through. And if there's any comments, questions, anything that you want to be added into it, there'll be time for that. So as soon as I have a further update or have the document in hand, I will make sure that everybody has it.
All right, great. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, and next up, Walk with Jesus, Tiana. Tiana, if you're there, just need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, I just started on that, so I haven't been to a meeting yet for the Walk with Jesus.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes. Okay.
We'll look forward to an update next time.
Thank you.
Okay, and back to Jen for Homeschool Parish Partnership.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm sorry, we had our first meeting a few weeks ago for the Homeschool Parish Committee. I just made some notes of some of the things we discussed. Faith formation opportunities for staff are continuing to take place in virtual setting. The diocese is working on implementing sacraments that have been delayed due to the shutdown of the churches in lockdown. A Homeschool Parish Best Practices publication has been compiled by Ontario Catholic Trustees Association. We're going to be able to get copies of that for all Cpic members. So when that is available, I will let you know and get that distributed to you. I did actually hear a bit about, we talked about the Walk with Jesus in our meeting, which is on May the 6th. What was discussed was that the details are still being finalized, but Bishop Crosby and the pastors are going to be recording a message for students to be played, I guess either in their classrooms or if they're virtual students in their virtual classrooms. The liturgy is going to be streamed in the morning to kick off the walk. Elementary students are going to be making their own paper crosses and putting it into a collage, and students will go for a walk with their class, and virtual students will be encouraged to go for a walk on their own. I think from a high school perspective, there's going to be a podcast perhaps set up with a hashtag so people can follow things on social media. But that's still being finalized. We also talked about the Growing in Faith program, which has now been implemented into the grade 7 curriculum. The grade 8 program will be implemented next September, and the kindergarten program the following year. And after that point, we will have all the grades we'll have implemented this Growing in Faith program. This program provides a great support for sacramental preparation. And there's a number of resources to support the program available on the portal online. And lastly, we discussed the Fully Alive program and talked about the board's attempt to interweave Catholicity into all subjects being taught. And that was it. And we're planning on having one more meeting at some point this year before the end of the year.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Jen. All right. Thanks one and all for your updates and your continued participation in those committees. Thank you. Okay. So moving on now to school council feedback regarding procedure VI 84, and that of course is the procedure that deals with Catholic school councils and Catholic parent involvement committees, and in particular the composition of membership of those committees. So I did circulate that, and I do hope everyone had a chance to review that. It was a fairly brief document. I will share it here just so we can all look at it together. Just bear with me as I pull up the appropriate one. Okay. All right. So, okay. So of course, by way of background, the board of trustees asked Cpic to solicit feedback, input, and opinions from our school councils broadly, and on the subject procedure. And so this is what was put out to essentially what was put out to the school councils to seek their input on the procedure as it is written today, and with the background of it's been raised that the procedure is seen by some to be restrictive, not reflective of an inclusive environment, but on the other hand, that it should maintain the Catholicity intent of that procedure to maintain our school councils and parent involvement committee as being largely Catholic. So as you can imagine, it was an open-ended question. We got a very broad spectrum of feedback. So between Jen and I, so we fielded the feedback. And so far it sits with us, and so what we endeavored to do was to summarize it in a way that we could distill it to some of the major themes that we saw coming through. And so you'll see here And actually, since this was written, there's been a couple more responses that have come in. So this is not entirely accurate in terms of the number of schools that have responded. But the themes are pretty consistent in terms of the variety of feedback that we got. And what you can see here is we had everything in terms of responses, everything from membership should be there should be no Catholic component requirement whatsoever. So completely wide open, and it doesn't matter the faith base of the parent members on the councils. To it should be maintained exactly the way it is. And then we had everything in between. So in terms of some that recommended that the number of non-Catholic members be allowed to be increased. Some saying that maintain a majority of Catholic representation, but use a percentage rather than a fixed number. And then you had those that also weighed in on. So you see that there, general agreement for allowing the number of non-Catholics in Scotland to increase. And then of course, not surprising, I suppose, those opposed to increasing the number of non-Catholic members of school council were primarily concerned about preserving Catholicity in our schools. Again, and then there was some that pointed out that our non-Catholic parents are greatly involved already in other capacities, whether it be in fundraising and other community events. So they saw it as rather immaterial what the number was set for school councils. Let's see. So some responses specifically addressed whether the majority of school council members should be Catholic. Of these responses, the more widely held view was that the majority should be Catholic. So that was one of the strong themes that came out. And then some got into the specifics of school council chairs. And again, the general consensus was that the chair should be Catholic. However, there were some that indicated that in the case of co-chairs, that only one needed to be Catholic and the other could be non-Catholic. That was for elementary schools. For secondary schools, there were some differences in that, of course, the faith base of our student population is obviously different for secondary schools than it is for elementary. And then so you see from here, so there were more responses supporting the possibility of increasing the number of non-Catholics, and again, just more of a function of the actual composition of the families that attend those schools. And they gave some rationale as to why. Those opposing the increase indicated that they felt the current policy was fine, that their school councils did not have issues attracting members that were already being inclusive. So again, the experiences varied greatly. And again, as I mentioned before, noteworthy as comment that it should be expressed as a percentage rather than a fixed number. Again, part of the rationale there was that the size is just simply the size of school councils varies greatly from school to school and from elementary to secondary. So a percentage was a strong theme that came out, that it should be represented that way. And again, several responses indicated that the majority or significant majority be Catholic, 50% or more, and that the chair or co-chair be Catholic. There definitely were some that came through, and I think part of this can be addressed through communication rather than necessarily a change of the procedure or policy. That some non-Catholics indicated that they did not feel valued or equal due to their non-Catholicity. What we learned from some of the responses was that it's not greatly understood by all that, number one, non-Catholics do have a place on school councils, and number two, that those non-Catholic parent representatives do have a vote. There was some misunderstanding out there that non-Catholic members didn't have a say, didn't have a vote or a voice at the table. So definitely, as we endeavor to improve communications and consistency amongst our school councils, there's something here for us to work on for sure. Yeah, and there's that summarized there. So that clearly is not the case. Right, and one school council noted they do not have a limit on the number of school council members permitted. Yeah, some councils, especially the high schools, tend to have some of them can have very large councils, which isn't expressly prohibited. But I'm curious as to how they manage with 20 plus members and how many of them vote. So again, it's opened up some other interesting things. So more work to do there. So I'll stop there. That's kind of the summary of the feedback. There we go. I want to bring up my screen again. Okay, and I see some hands up. Yes, Nancy.
Jerry, just the ask, especially so that Tiana can make sure that she can participate. So if we could please make sure that Tiana, are you able to hear or view what everything's being presented right now?
Yeah, I had actually read that when it was emailed out. So I already had the information and I was able to see it on screen. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. And Tiana, do you have a comment or question?
Actually, yeah. My first question, when I was reading it, I was surprised at the response percentages. I found them to be very, very low. Is that normal for responses to questions that go out to school councils? The percentage response rate? Sorry.
Yeah. I'll share my own, and this is purely anecdotal, certainly nothing scientific here, but just from having run the election last year, the percentage is kind of typical. And unfortunately you don't get a high percentage return rate, and I think the experience of the board and of course, not just, again, purely anecdotal from what I've heard, is there's quite a number of surveys and things that go out throughout the year, and it's difficult to get a really high response rate as what I understand. Nancy, did you want to comment on that?
I did have another comment I wanted to make. This is more of just what surprised me when this question came to our school council, because on the school that I'm at, and we spent about 40 minutes in our school council meeting discussing this and coming up with our response. And what shocked our group was that people didn't even know this was a bylaw, or it's a bylaw, right? They didn't know that there was a restriction on the number of non-Catholics or Catholics, or that even that co-chairs or chairs had to be Catholic. And so I just wanted to provide that feedback that I think a lot of people didn't even know this existed.
Yeah. So and again, I think it's just evidence that there's work to be done here to achieve some consistency. We learned through this process as well that there are schools that don't have bylaws in place, and they need to. So if they don't have bylaws in place that are reflective of the board's policies and procedures, inevitably we're going to end up with inconsistency and basically schools not following the board procedures and policies, and that's what we've found it to be the case. Not widespread, but enough there that you've got some schools that are not running things properly. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Nancy.
Jerry, I just wanted to ask, Tiana, can you please ensure that you can hear and see everything that is being shared right now?
I can see right. Well, right now I don't see anything shared. I just see the. Oh, you are sharing right now? Is that shared screen?
Yes, I believe you should still be able to see the summary document.
No, what I see are just people's initials, like the bubbles with the people's initials and videos. Like
I think there's a screen in front of the document, Jerry. That's what I'm seeing.
Me too.
Oh, that's right, because I'm sharing my screen, not the document itself. How's that?
Okay, let me just check something here.
Yeah.
Yes, I see the document and I can hear what people are saying. Yes, thank you.
All right. Yeah, I guess my only challenge with this is that I can't see the hands when I do this. I need two screen setup. But anyway. Okay, Maria, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, I had a few questions and comments. I'm going to try and consolidate as much as I can. One thing I wanted to mention, you know, I've been on councils for many years, elementary, secondary, a few different schools. I'm not surprised to hear that people aren't aware of all these rules. And one thing I know I had mentioned early on was there used to be, and I think the document was still on the old board website. I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be school council training, and it used to be offered. It was optional, but it was offered every year, and it covered a lot of this kind of stuff. So I think that, I mean, there's lots of great work already being done by our subcommittees, but that might be another thing to consider maybe for next year. It could be done at the first council or chairs of the year, for example. But I do think there's a lack of awareness of a lot of the rules per se. And I know some people don't want to get tied down with the rules, but I think they're there for a reason, and I think they are important. And they can actually prevent trouble sometimes. So I just wanted to say that. But I'm just wondering as well, in terms of the process with this, what's being done with the individual responses, and are they going to be provided? Like, obviously you and Jen tried to consolidate as best you could, and I'm sure that was a lot of work, because I know even just consolidating my own council was a bit of work. And I'm just wondering, I know normally, like when the board does surveys, they'll summarize, but they'll also share the detailed responses with trustees so that they get the full feedback. And I'm just wondering what's happening with that. That's one question.
Okay, want to take that one first?
Yeah, maybe, because I think it might get lost.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, you know, it's a good question, Maria, and Jen and I were talking about that. And our kind of our inclination at first was just to provide the summary. And certainly if you know, part of it will depend on the trustees, because this is a request from the board of trustees, and what they want. That said, I'm very cognizant of you know, protecting the privacy of those that provided the feedback. One thing I'll say too about the nature of the feedback, some of it was done in summary form, where you know, as in some of the cases that we've heard here tonight, councils, you know, discussed it at length. They came back with summary responses based on those discussions. Others passed along their individual responses from individual council members. So again, it varied greatly, and some, you know, everything from a one-line response to what I would call short essays, and everything in between. So certainly, if we're to pass on the detailed responses. Number one, we would strip out any identifying information, just to respect those that that wrote those responses, because we are treating it as, an open venue, an open platform to share your opinion freely. So I think we need to respect the privacy of the individual responses. So at this point, again, I think at this point we'll provide the summary to the board of trustees, and then see what the ask is from there. Yeah, as you can imagine, I think there's some sensitivity around a document like this, not necessarily the summary one, but the detailed one. There's a lot of impassioned responses in there. So yeah, without wanting to censor it, but I also do feel a need to kind of protect it, if you follow me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you for sharing that. And I can appreciate, it's difficult to capture everything. And I guess one thing I would say is, sometimes there might be something that maybe only one person said. It's not necessarily a majority opinion, but it might really resonate and be like, and that might get lost when you're summarizing, because you can't capture every single thing, right? So,
True.
If I may, there's a couple of things from ours that I feel strongly about, and I'd like to share them. I don't know if they're going to make it any further. I'm assuming that you got ours, because I know it came in late, but it did come in before you sent this out.
No, we got yours in for sure, Maria.
So was mine the short essay, or was mine the somewhere in between?
Yours wasn't the longest.
Mine was the longest.
It was not the longest.
Oh, not okay.
Yeah, there were some really lengthy ones, that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of points that
So Maria, I don't know that that's what we're here to do today.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I would say no. And just suffice to say that, I mean, we've got it all documented. So so just I guess in fairness to everyone else that can't be here to lobby for their position, I don't think this is the venue for it. So again, so in terms of what we do next, I think it is, now, first of all, we wanted to take it back to our committee, because we were the ones that who were tasked with gathering this information. So important that this be shared. And part of the reason, of course, to share it here is that this has implications for our own committee, in terms of our future composition and our own bylaws. For how we fill seats and on the Cpic. So important that everyone get the perspective of the school councils, because it'll ultimately affect us as well. So
okay, can I just ask one more question then?
Yep.
So your summary is very specific to the question about the Catholic versus non-Catholic membership. We did provide some feedback on the policy as well, because I think the policy only gets reviewed every 3 years. So I'm just not sure. I don't know if others did or not. I think even in your background, it talks about feedback with respect to the policy and or procedure. So I guess I'm just wondering what might happen with that feedback. Yeah. I mean, I can certainly submit it directly, right? So that's fine.
Yeah, very true, Maria. There's nothing stopping you from submitting it directly to to your local trustee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had actually meant to send in my own personal as a Cpic member, and I just didn't get to it. So yeah. I mean, obviously that's all there, and that's fine. Yeah. But I just wondered about that piece, because I didn't know if anyone else sent any other feedback in, but the policies only come up every 3 years, so this is kind of the opportunity to give any feedback at all. So
yeah, by all means. And I see Trustee O'Brien's got his hand up, so I'll be interested to hear what Tim has to say about this too, and perhaps between Trustee O'Brien and Vice Chair Duarte, they may indicate a preference for how they'd like to receive this feedback. So let's maybe get to that in a moment.
Yeah, and that's all I had, other than what you're not going to let me share.
Thanks for respecting that, Maria.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, Joel, go ahead.
I thought you were going to let Trustee O'Brien go first.
If you don't mind, we can jump to Trustee O'Brien. I won't forget about
Well,
you.
he technically he had his hand up first.
So did he? Okay.
Yeah.
That's not how it shows in my queue, but no problem. Thanks, Joel. We'll come back to you. Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you, Joel. I'll be brief. So, Jerry, piggybacking a little bit on what you said about comments coming back just as a whole without any name attached, that's really helpful to us. The summative comments are really good, but we usually get both. We get when we get our feedback, it comes as a summative comment, and then we do get a list of every single comment without any names attached, and those are actually quite helpful. Personally, I'm quite in. I would like to see those two parents that non-Catholic said they did not feel valued. I'd like to see fully what they said, because I think that definitely has to be addressed. So I would agree with you. Comments, no names, but definitely the full comments. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough, Trustee O'Brien. That's kind of what I expected. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Back to you, Joel.
Okay. My question was, because going over the responses here, everything, it seemed that we have quite a plethora of different responses. I mean, we're going from literally from scrap the policy altogether and just let any parent run for school council, all the way to everything's fine the way it is, and a lot of stuff in between. As the person who read who got the hard copies, is there a consensus that we as Cpic can take going forward? Because I'm from what I'm reading here, I'm not really seeing any majority thoughts on the matter that we can say is that this would be our opinion. I'm seeing a lot of mixed bags across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in some respects, it'd be nice if we had a clear indication, if we had clear data, numerical data, to tell us that it's 60% this way, 40% that way. But the nature of gathering of how we gather this feedback was not that way. So I would be reticent to try and assign percentage values to X percent said this and X percent said that, because that's not how we did it, right? It wasn't that kind of an instrument.
But I guess so. But I guess I was just saying, even anecdotally, just to kind of get there's a common theme of we want this direction to go forward. Can we even say that there's that's the tone that the various school councils want us to take?
Well, I mean, there were several themes that emerged, but I think one is safe to say that inclusivity was the overriding theme, that that every school council is in favor of inclusivity, that everyone have a voice, that they have an ability an opportunity to contribute. But then where it went from there, of course, is how does that happen? For example, some councils are quite happy to say, what, we think the rules are fine the way they are because we have great participation from Catholics and non-Catholics alike, in various formats. So whether they be ad hoc committees for fundraising, for community events, for parent engagement, whatever it is. So they already have great inclusivity. They're happy with the way it is, and then others are more staunchly supportive of we need to be more supportive or more inclusive through how the procedure is written. So again, if the one theme came through, it was that desire for inclusivity and for people to have a voice and be valued. So the devil's in the details of how do we accomplish that, or how does the board accomplish that?
Well, yeah, that's just what I was wondering what Cpic could put together to say this is our our advice as the
well
parent councils. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know, Joel, that we'll do that necessarily.
Okay.
We were asked to gather the feedback. We've synthesized it here in the summary, and again, I expect the ask will be that we provide the actual verbatim feedback that we received. Stripped out of names and identification and whatnot, and then it'll be for the Board of Trustees to then digest. Now, as it comes to our own committee, I think that we have to have a follow-up conversation after now everyone's had an opportunity to digest the feedback from the schools, and then of course considering our own opinions on the matter, to have a follow-up conversation at our next meeting about what we would say to the Board of Trustees about our own committee. So I do think we need to do that.
Okay. Would that be like a subcommittee formed, or do we wait to the next our next Cpic meeting?
Our next Cpic meeting. That would have to be everybody.
Okay.
So the ask between now and then is for everyone to consider the same question. So looking at how the procedure is written today, and remember the procedure is written for both school councils and parent involvement committee. It's not just for school councils. And we'll have your own thoughts about it, and then we'll have a discussion on it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joel. Trustee O'Brien, is your hand back up, or is that from before? Okay, I'm not sure. Nancy, is your hand up anew?
Thanks, Jerry. Jerry, you know what? You're the way you're sharing your screen, that's why it made look like that. So I just don't know if you want to stop sharing your screen.
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Okay, just I wasn't sure if you were able to see the hands that were up.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Okay, I was just following up on that. Jen, you've put a question out to me, but I'm not quite sure now what the question you're asking me. You want to confirm that, Jen?
Yeah, just Maria had indicated that in their response, they had put some thoughts around other portions of the policy or procedure. And I just wanted to clarify with you, I believe that the only portion of the procedure that we were asked to gather feedback on was specific to this subsection on membership composition.
That's correct. That is.
That's correct. But I think if I may answer for Maria, the point being that there was some feedback that came through the responses, not just Maria's and her councils, but others that I'm sure school council members would like to see elevated to the Board of Trustees along with this feedback. And that is, I think some of it had to do with what's policy versus procedure, that kind of thing. So yeah, not that it necessarily weighs on the specific feedback to the procedure VI 84.
Okay, sorry, I thought that they had pretty much finalized the rest of the procedure, and this was the only portion that was left to be worked on.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly, as you know, Jen, the responses are really, some of them go beyond just addressing the procedure, don't they? So, nonetheless, it could potentially be valuable, as presented. So we'll see. Okay, Trustee O'Brien, your hand's up. Was that from before, or do you have something new?
That was from before. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Tim. All right, and Maria, I see your hand up. Is that new?
Yeah, it is again. Sorry. Okay. Just a couple quick things. Just in response to the last sort of comment and question, I know that the board was specifically asking for feedback on that one question, but again, I think policies get reviewed every 3 years, and I think, I guess the trustees can do with it what they will, but I think that we should be able to provide any feedback if a policy is on the table. I mean, certainly that's why people delegate and write correspondence and so on, right? So I would hope that anything that is brought forward, would at least be presented to trustees for their consideration. And, you know, in terms of Joel's comment about the feedback being all over the place, and I will say, yeah, like even on our own council, it was like I literally had one person say, leave it as it is. And that person's actually not Catholic. And another person say, why don't we open it all the way up? And that person is Catholic. And then one person say simple majority, and one person say a proportion of the pot. Like it just literally, I had one of every kind of answer. So, you know, it's what do you do with that? I don't know. But I did want to mention, Jerry, you were saying, and I agree with this comment, that there was some feedback that schools are, that there is inclusivity in the schools in other ways, not just through council memberships, but in subcommittees and in other opportunities like that. And that was actually one of the points that I wanted to make, because that was in our feedback. But I will just say I didn't feel that came through in the summary. Maybe I missed it, but I do think that's a good point. And I don't know whether that can be sort of added in, but because you obviously you felt that did come through as a key point, and I think that is important because I think there are other ways, so that might be something to consider.
Yeah, you know, and that's fair, Maria. I do believe we mentioned it in there, that you know there's other ways of inclusivity. Maybe we can probably draw it out some more.
Yeah, because
and as I reflect as well. I think it's probably fair to us to include in there some of the other commentary around like I said, clearly it's opened our eyes to some other deficiencies that exist.
Right.
So you know, like the lack of having bylaws, the lack of consistency of size of councils, the lack of application of the procedure VI 84. So there's you know, just to draw out that there's other work to be done here other than just considering that procedure.
Yeah, and on the bylaw point, I would also say some schools have them, but like they don't review them. And I at my elementary school, I waited a few months to get a copy from the principal as chair. Like I asked for them, and they didn't have them electronic. They were hard copy, and they should be. Everyone should have a copy at the beginning of the year, right? And I think that was a suggestion that came from the old Cpic group, was to put that somewhere in the policy or procedure that bylaws be reviewed at the start of the year. And I do think that would be a good practice.
Well, that should be in every school's bylaws, assuming they have bylaws.
Well, this is the thing. There's a lot of things that should be happening that aren't, to your point,
no,
right?
Exactly.
So,
so that'll be for further discussion, deliberation amongst us, and then what do we do about it? Yeah.
The only other question I wanted to ask was, under elementary schools, you said there was general agreement for allowing, etc. And then under secondary, it said there was more responses supporting the possibility of increasing. So I'm just wondering, do you have numbers behind that? And I don't know what the general agreement means versus more responses.
Not off the top, Maria.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can provide a bit more detail. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Jen.
Sorry, I'm not sure if we actually follow our bylaws with respect to time, but I think we need to have a vote if we're extending the meeting past 90 minutes.
I think we're good until 9 o'clock before.
We're good to 9? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think we're good till 9. No, but thanks for keeping us mindful of the time. Okay. Okay. All right. Yes, Nancy.
Jerry, just I did speak with Nancy Guzzo about the procedure and the things that we were talking about. So right now they did ask us for feedback around this Catholicity piece, specifically the membership. But she said if we wanted to go back with something else, we could go back outside of the 3-year review of that policy. Okay, so if there's something we really wanted to give input on, we could give input on. So just so you know that, because remember we were talking about the number of members, and I said to her, you weren't thinking about changing the number of members, just what the membership looked like, especially as we're going to get to that item. So she said you could bring it back, okay, and that the policy committee could bring it back, okay. So you just didn't have to do it at the review period. So if anybody was concerned about that, I think just know that. But right now they did ask for feedback specifically on that one point.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Okay. No, good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. Very good. I think we'll end our discussion there on that piece, and of course, more to come. And now that we've had a chance to review it here, we will be passing it along to our board of trustees for their use and for the policy committee. All right. Thank you. And again, not forgetting that we will circle back at our next meeting for our own discussion about Cpic. Okay. All right. Next item here, council chairs for May 19th. Jen, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Just looking for anyone's ideas for discussion items for our next council chair meeting in May. Currently, we don't have anything specifically that's been raised as ideas for agenda items. So just wanted to allow a couple minutes today for people to brainstorm or throw out any ideas they have about things that they would like covered or they think would be good topics to be covered at the next council chair meeting. Does anybody have any ideas? Okay, well, given that we're already probably a little bit over our time, maybe I'll suggest that if you have any ideas, you think of anything, please email Jerry or I. We have some time, but we would like to start getting this agenda, start working on getting it finalized and getting any speakers we need, organizing anything we need for that meeting. So if you have any ideas, please email Jerry or I. Thanks very much.
Okay. Hi there. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. All right. So Cpic membership composition. So we've, as part of the bylaw subcommittee discussions, one of the things we've been reviewing is the actual our own composition, and this is not from a Catholic non-Catholic standpoint, rather from thinking of at large versus regional representation. So we had some discussions amongst ourselves, of course, and we wanted to put forward. And again, this won't be for a vote today. Rather, this is just for information at this point, because this will require some consideration and further discussion. But I am going to share my screen here one more time just to share a document. Okay, and I feel like I'm going to need to zoom that a little bit for everyone.
Just make it bigger so that Tiana can see it. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. All right. So again, as I said, in conjunction with reviewing and updating our current bylaws, we had a look at this composition, and part of it stemmed out of a discussion around North Halton and how much Milton is growing. We also considered the setup of the Board of Trustees and the representation there. And so it somewhat stemmed from that discussion around North Halton, because right now we actually have 3 North Halton representatives, and then the other composition remains the same: 2 Burlington, 2 Oakville, 4 at large. What we're proposing is that at a future date, and we'll go over that in a second, is that we end up in an arrangement whereby there's 3 for Burlington, 3 for Oakville, 2 for Milton, 1 for Halton Hills, and 1 at large. So the total number of 10 remains the same. However, we put more into regional positions, and keep just one at-large representative. We also discussed why do we have at-large representatives. It is a source of confusion. I can tell you when it comes time for elections, and the way the current composition is, there's always a number of regional and at-large positions that are coming up on any given year. And then when we go to hold our elections, it can be confusing as to what we're asking of the schools, and inevitably we get some that no matter how hard we try to make the instructions as clear as possible, and understanding, of course, that it's a manual voting process, we don't always get back the appropriate responses in terms of the types and numbers of votes that each school council should be providing. So part of the discussion stemmed out of, well, why do we have these at-large representations? Because they seem to muddy the waters and make the election process a little more cumbersome. So this is where we landed as a proposed possible future setup for Cpic. So going on to some of the details of how we do this. So conversion to the proposed membership composition. This would be something we would do at a future date as the positions come available, and we can essentially reassign vacant positions to the appropriate regional representation format. So, for example, if we wait to implement this proposed composition in the 22-23 school year, we'll have the following representation on Cpic. So one from Burlington, two from Oakville, one from North Halton, and one at large. And then under this timeline, the at large representative would stay at large, and then the other positions would then be opened up to add two for Burlington, one to Oakville, and two to North Halton. Again, either two being Milton or Halton Hills, depending on the residency of the members at that time. Okay, so that's what we were considering, and what we were thinking to propose as our future composition. So I'll stop there, and again we'll circulate this so people can review it properly. But wanted to open it up if we could for a brief discussion. I recognize we're at 8:45 here, and this is the last agenda item. But maybe just some initial feedback or any questions others might have. And Jen, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Jerry. I just wanted to add that one of the other reasons we were proposing this composition is it's always a really difficult decision for someone to run as a regional rep or an at-large rep. And we feel that we could gather the best quality candidates by allowing them to run for the region they represent. And then basically, when you read through the document, you'll see that at-large position will basically be the person who gathers the most votes, regardless of what region they're from, but doesn't actually gain a seat. So we're hopeful that this methodology will help us gather the best candidates, and somebody won't have to arbitrarily choose which region they're running for, or sorry, which position, if it's a regional or at-large.
Yeah, no, great point, Jen. Thanks for raising that. And again, we had a discussion around what's the purpose of an at-large position, and generally, if you look at that, it's to ensure that areas that wouldn't otherwise be represented have representation. But in our setup, every part of the region has representation, and in fact, if we increase the number of representatives to 3 per, notwithstanding Milton and Halton Hills splitting that up into 2 and 1, that there should always be sufficient representation for every area. So hence, really not much need from our view anyway to have so many at-large representatives. because every part of the region is represented. So that was part of the rationale for moving away from having 4 at large.
Barry?
Yeah, is it Marvin?
Yes, just a suggestion here, question here.
Sure.
What came up at the last board meeting in the report, if you look at it, is the distribution and the enrollment in different regions. So the enrollment in Milton is 33% of the board students, whereas in Burlington it's 28%, 28%, 26%, and Oakville is 28%. So I do not know whether you want to consider that, because if it's 1/3 the population wise, if you want to go that way, it's just a suggestion, just an idea.
Yeah, no, great, great point, Marvin, and absolutely part of our consideration was on what basis do we decide representation, and what we chose to use was number of schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not the students, not the enrollment.
No, not enrollment.
Okay.
Because if we consider what's the function of Cpic, and that is to represent our school councils, therefore based on the number of schools, the representation of 3 per area lined up pretty well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You thought it through.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We tried to. No, but good question. That's thanks. I'm sure you're not the only one thinking it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Nancy.
Jerry, I did speak to Nancy Guzzo about this, exactly what you had shared about bringing that to her. So for just an amendment, is that we could just even start the discussion. Okay, so she is aware of it. And then I wanted to let everybody know that Andrea, my admin assistant, for the current election, so everything that was shared at the council chairs last week, she has created the Microsoft Forms that she's going to share tomorrow or for sure by Wednesday to each of the school councils where the membership for the elections will need to get the votes for. So it's through a Microsoft Forms, really organized. So she's got it. I don't know, Andrea, if you want to share what you have created, and then she'll post them as well to the board's website, and then we'll give it to communications so they could also push it out through some of the social media sites so that we can try to get everybody who's interested in having a nomination for the elections up. Andrea, do you want to share that?
Can you just scroll through the form, Andrea? Okay. That's good. And what's on the responses tab?
That's for us,
Oh, okay.
Jerry. Like
That's for you. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's good. It's simple, clean. I like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that will go out tomorrow or for sure by Wednesday. Okay. So we can gather through the month of November. We won't be going back through the month of March. The nominations. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's great. Very simple and clean. Very well done, whoever put that together.
That's all, Andrea.
All right. Well done, Andrea. Thank you. Good stuff. Okay. All right. And there's Joel offering to share to the Facebook page. Thanks, Joel. Okay. All right. Okay. So as I said, that membership composition document will we'll share that for everyone's consideration, and then we'll raise it with the policy committee just to flag them that this is the way we intend going. But of course, we'll have to agree on it first here. Okay. All right. Is there any other business or any other future agenda items that anyone wishes to raise? David.
Yes. Just one thing mainly concerns me. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes, hear you fine, David.
Oh, good. I just want to excuse myself, and I'm removing myself from the role as community representative. I don't want to get into any real discussion about it. But just this is my last meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Very well, David. Well, thank you for your time and contributions. Sorry to hear that. Okay. But as you said, no discussion on it, no problem. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Jen?
I was just going to suggest, Jerry, I don't know if anybody right now wants to be part of this program committee. Otherwise, perhaps Jerry and I will send an email and ask for volunteers for committee members to put this program event on.
Okay. So perhaps we can do that. Unless there's anyone that wants to put their hand up now, we can follow up with that offline.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. And as always, anytime, folks, you've got something you want to raise as a future agenda item, either for this meeting or for council chairs, please anytime email Jen and myself, and we'll be happy to keep tabs. All right. Terrific. Okay, and that brings us to our closing prayer. Father Dave, if you would be so kind.
Sure. All right, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus, we thank you for being with us during this meeting. Help us to continue our important work and to continue to work for your glory and for the salvation of all your people. Lord Jesus, we praise you now and forever. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. All right. Okay, 8:55. I declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for your time and your thoughtful insights and discussions and considerations tonight. And enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.